We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alliance of Independent Authors Self-Publishing Advice. Our member Q&A this week. I'm here with Michael and Ronn. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Orna. Happy March.
Happy March. Yeah, well into March already. Where is the time going? I don't know why lockdown makes time go faster, but it does.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you have the questions lined up for us this
I
week.
do.
As ever, our members have really interesting questions which they have put forward for us to discuss in this public forum so that everyone who's listening can benefit from the advice. So thank you to everyone who sent in questions. What have you got for us this time out?
Yes. So the first question comes from member Peter. And the question is, I think something that a lot of people have been thinking about, especially as we're starting to come out of lockdown in some places, and at least here in the States, the weather's a lot nicer. And the question is, as a first-time author, my book is approximately 6 months out from being published. When should I start the search for a book marketer? And does ALLi have a list of marketers that we can take a look at? So that's the specific question. But I think the more general question is, when is the best time to start marketing my book?
Great question. And well done, Peter, to start thinking about things 6 months in advance, because very often we find that people with their first book, they kind of just get through the production of the book and get it up there and then go, what now? How do I let people know this book exists? So great to be out there at this point. So the first thing I would say to you is, yes, we do have a small supply of marketing advice and implementation companies that we can recommend, and you'll find those in the searchable database, in the member zone, and in the member directory. So that service is available to you, but there is lots that you will do for yourself. And we actually recommend that no author hires marketing help until you understand yourself what marketing is, what promotion is, how those two things differ, and how you kind of connect the dots and know what you're doing. So the thing about marketing and promotion is it's complex and it's multi-layered. So you've got your general sort of author platform stuff. And that is essentially everything that makes you visible as an author out in the world. Then you've got your specific promotion of yourself as an author, which would include things like podcast interviews, maybe interviews, online, radio, TV, that sort of thing. Book promotion, which is specifically around the title and the book, but also book placement and positioning, which if it's your first time as an author, you possibly haven't given enough to. So that will be, who are your comparable authors? Where do you fit into the publishing ecosystem? What is your category, your keywords, your niche, and so on. So there's an awful lot to think about, and there's an awful lot that only you can do for yourself. And in terms of when should you start, right now is the answer, I think. And Michael will have loads to say on this, I know as well. But I think right now is the answer to every author, no matter what stage you're at. You begin to think about marketing the day you begin to think about writing your book is actually the ideal. And marketing is something that, as an author publisher, goes hand in hand all the way through with the writing, from the very, very first book until, me right now, this week, I have to work out, how am I going to fit in my marketing tasks with my writing tasks? They go hand in hand. And the more you can bring those two things together, the more successful your marketing is likely to be. So, over to you, Michael, maybe on some of the specifics.
Yeah, the best time to start marketing is now, but make sure you do the right things. Because what a lot of people will do sometimes is hire a publicist when their book isn't even available yet, and there's no return on investment. All right, that's the thing about the marketing is there's the old adage that 50% of marketing works. No one knows what 50% it is that actually works. Just be careful early on. There's a lot of authors early on who sometimes tend to throw money at the problem as if they think that that will help solve it. Other people sometimes tend to spam the problem. So if I talk about my book nonstop, then that'll help boost awareness for it. That doesn't really work either. So investing in learning things like Facebook advertising or Amazon advertising or BookBub advertising, or even, getting, this is maybe an advanced tip, but sometimes the first cover for your first book doesn't work and you don't know why it doesn't work. Sometimes it might help to A/B test your covers. Maybe you get 2 covers designed and then you have people vote on which one works the best. If you're going to throw money at a problem, that's one way I would do it, because at least that way you can at least get your cover right. But yeah, it's just sometimes early marketing it's about what you don't do as opposed to what you actually do. Because if you can avoid the things that will eat up your money, eat up your time, eat up your patience, and not bring you an ROI, you can get a better investment. So that would be my advice on that.
Absolutely. And then there are a lot of things that are essential from a marketing perspective that have to be done that won't actually necessarily sell books straight off, but you have to do these kinds of tasks. Like you need an author website, for example.
Right.
It should ideally be a transactional website so people can buy. You need to, as Michael said, really understand what goes into a book cover for your particular genre. All these are kind of the basics. You need a good book description. You need a one sheet about the book that, media or reviewers or people like that can go to, which gives them, handy Q&As about the book and where it comes. You need to know who writes similar books to you, what similar stuff is out there. All of that is marketing stuff that is absolutely essential. You have to do it. And I think there's something else that happens with the first book, which is that authors don't necessarily want to do the marketing work. And there are a few reasons for that. Feeling not equal to it is one reason, but also feeling I've done enough, I've written this book, which is a huge, big deal. Then I've had to learn all about editorial and design and get it up there and out there. And all of that is a huge amount of work. To turn around and then have to learn about marketing and then specifically about book promotion can just sometimes feel like a bridge too far. And that's another reason why it's really good to start these things well out in advance. So, until you have a website in place, until you have an email list, a reader magnet that will attract people to your email list, and a sense of your book placement and positioning, where it falls out in the marketplace, I would say hold off on doing any other marketing. Get all of that in place and move on to writing your second book if necessary, if you haven't got all that set up to your own satisfaction. Marketing dollars are best spent when you have 3 books in the can. It's very, very seldom worthwhile unless it's a particular, non-fiction one-off kind of book that you're writing for a very specific reason. But for the average fiction or poetry author, it is not worthwhile investing in a service on book 1. You're just not going to see that money back, and you're not necessarily going to shift a lot of books. And that's no reflection on the book. It's just the nature of things.
Agree. And remember the 80-20 of marketing. That marketing is kind of like an iceberg, right? Marketing is all the work that you can't see under the surface. And then the tip of the iceberg is the promotion.
That's exactly it.
And Milena in the comments says, Orna, it is so good to hear you say this. I feel validated in my efforts. I'm writing my first book. And at the same time, I'm learning about marketing.
Fantastic. Great. Keep going.
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Peter, for the question that spawned our theme today. So next question that came through was from Charles. And there were a few other folks who had this question as well. But this is, where do I find the Ingram Spark promo code for anyone who is curious about that?
Sure. So first of all, thank you very much to Ingram Spark for providing a promo code for our members. This allows for up to 50 changes or uploads on the Ingram Spark dashboard this year. So perfectly adequate for most of our members. And you find the discount code in the same place that you find all the other wonderful discount and deals that we have from our partner members. Essentially, the discounts and deals page in the member zone. So just log in with your password that you set when you joined and go to the discounts and deals page. And while you're in there, and we find that some of our members actually forget to go into the member zone often enough or even at all. So while you're there, do take a look around at all the other things that are in there, all the other benefits and downloads and resources and everything else that's there. But yeah, you'll be surprised at the excellent discounts and deals that are available in addition to the Ingram code, which is a fantastic benefit.
All right. Next question is from Jack. And Jack asks, can you recommend a good syndicated service for my debut book release?
Syndicated service. So I'm not sure exactly what's being asked for there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I left out an important part of the question. Can you recommend a good syndicated service for my debut book press release?
Okay.
That's probably a little bit more helpful.
Yes, great. Well, there are a good few, of these press release services that will put out a press release about your book. Again, it's, I would think, not a great return on investment. So our recommendation is not to do it, I'm afraid. Unless you have a particular, very newsworthy story, it's highly unlikely to be picked up on. It will give you a Google mention, which can have some value depending on the book. But again, for the vast majority of fiction authors and the vast majority of poets, this sort of service has little or no value. It's not hugely expensive, but that amount of money, it can be depending on what sort of a budget you have to promote your book. And that sort of money, we would argue, is better spent on other things. So if press is something that you're interested in, doing up your own press release and finding people who are specifically interested in the kind of thing that you write and in what your, where your niche is, where your keywords or categories, those things we were talking about in relation to the last question, carefully honing one query to somebody who's likely to be interested in your offering has far more value than just putting the press release out there. They're almost never looked at by journalists.
Right. Yeah, I've never, I don't know anyone who has had success with press releases. You almost have to do some sort of media stunt in order to get them to pay attention, and no one's going to pay it. There's just such a bias towards self-published writers with traditional media, even like web media, that I just don't think it's worth anyone's time. And that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I think, that will be the opinion of most of our most successful members as well. There is a way to approach media, but it's time consuming. It's not something that just kind of blasting out a press release is going to achieve for you. And you have to think of it from the journalist point of view. They're getting hundreds of these every day. And there was a time, perhaps, it's a very, very long time ago, when somebody having written a book was a press-worthy event, but not any longer. So, yeah, divert your money somewhere else and maybe put some time into this if mainstream media is important and valuable as an actual sales tool. That's the other thing. Sometimes new authors just automatically go for mainstream press and press release because they think that's what you should do. It is how books were traditionally marketed. You may have read it as advice on a blog somewhere, but actually mainstream press does not sell a lot of books. And so again, it's a matter of working out carefully your strategy and why you're approaching this person and why you think they'll be interested.
And, just because you get press doesn't mean it's going to be good press. So sometimes be careful what you wish for, because you might get it and you might not like what they write about your book. So just keep that in mind too. I've seen stories of that too.
Definitely. And there are those who say that no publicity is bad publicity. I think it was Brendan Behan. There's no such thing as bad publicity except your obituary.
Yeah.
But that's actually debatable from a marketing perspective. And especially for a new author, bad publicity can be very derailing creatively and commercially. So yeah, if you're thinking about it from a marketing perspective, you should be looking at what gets most books sold for me here.
Mm-hmm.
And, $150, which is the cheapest you will get one of these press release services for, could actually be used with an assistant to do something else that could actually generate far more book sales.
Yep. All right. And then on this topic here, Angie Scar says, happy to hear you say this. I've been thrown out of a group for suggesting that some services aren't worth it.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah. And
Michael
then
and I put a lot of time into making sure that the services we bring to you are worth it.
Yes, we do. We do. And Milena says local BBC radio can be contacted easily, and oftentimes it will be aired. It doesn't cost anything. And if a journalist is building up material for a story and your book release resonates, you might get an interview. So
yes,
appreciate that comment.
Thank you, Melina. And local radio generally and podcasts are two very good outlets for authors and can be approached with a press release. But again, in our experience, is best done directly rather than through a syndicated service.
All right. Our next question is from member Judy. And she asks, how do I get my self-published book into libraries?
Well, we've got a whole booklet on this because it's complicated. It depends on where you live and which library service you're working with and so on. So our best advice here is to log into the Member Zone and download your free copy of How to Get My Book into Libraries. But it's getting easier. Libraries are now much more open and have systems for ebooks and audiobooks that weren't there a few years ago. There are more suppliers going directly into the libraries. Kobo is now distributing directly to libraries as well. So yeah, it's libraries are not going to make your fortune, but they certainly are a good way to raise awareness of your book, and it's well worth, of course, supporting libraries. And many of us as authors are very grateful to libraries as the place where we learned our trade and found so many beloved books. So yeah, it can be worth doing for lots of reasons. And then there are countries, and the US is one of them, where you will actually receive some money from libraries, but in lots of jurisdictions you don't. It's not something that is lucrative in any way. So yeah, download the short booklet, How to Get Your Book into Libraries. That's the best advice.
Okay. Now, our next question is from Shondelyn, and there's a lot here. And I apologize, Shondelyn, that we won't be able to get to all of it. But essentially, the question is, I am new to self-publishing and new to ALLi, and I've written a first series of children's books. I've gotten feedback from beta readers and have edited numerous times. I've taken lots of notes from different places on self-publishing, and most people in their resources are very different. The first question, which is the one I want to make sure we hit, is how can I be sure that I am following the proper steps from start to finish of book publishing to ensure success?
Well, we have done our best to outline the 7 steps, the 7 processes of publishing, which apply across all forms of publishing. And these are pretty set, whether you're a trade publisher, whether you're a self-publisher. The actual processes are very set. So they are editorial, design, production, distribution, marketing, promotion, and rights licensing. But of course, within each of those processes, there are lots of different ways in which you can approach these things, and you'll get conflicting advice. Some authors, there are lots of perennial debates in the author industry where there is no right answer. There is just, the right answer for you at a particular time. And so, there is no black and white definitive list that somebody can say, this is right. And even if we were to go and see all your books and, you know, see your strategy and know what you want to achieve, still there are going to be some questions to which there isn't a right or wrong answer. So in a way, looking for that is asking for the impossible. Having said that, there are general practices that are tried and true and based on business principles as well as publishing principles and writing principles. And so we try to make a recommendation on these perennial sorts of debates. And I can't know exactly what steps you're referring to, but to give an example, the perennial debate as to whether you should just upload to Amazon or publish wide, we would recommend publishing wide based on the business principle that relying on one outlet is risky, and you are better to make yourself available wherever there are readers in as many formats as possible, in as many territories as possible. So that will be an example. But yeah, have you anything to add on that specific, Michael?
Yeah. I mean, I would just say, just go through it. And you're probably going to make some wrong steps or some missteps in the process. And once that's the thing about self-publishing. And it's something I've been telling a lot of authors, is that you don't know what all of the steps are necessarily until you're all the way through the process. Like, you know what the big picture is, but it's the little pictures. It's the pixels sometimes that are missing. And the best way to understand what those are is to publish your first book for the first time. Because then when you do your second book, you'll be like, oh, yeah, why did I do that? That one thing that I did, it made no sense, right? So in many respects, you don't know what you don't know until you do it the first time. That's what I just tell people, is to get that first book out. A lot of things will become clear once you do that.
That's completely right. Yeah, learning by doing rather than trying to get everything right in your head up front. It makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Okay. The next question is from Colin, and this is a very specific question, and that is, what is the best way to market my Christian leadership book?
And again, it's one of those unanswerable questions. So just knowing that it's a Christian leadership book isn't enough to be able to tell you the best way to market it. And again, the learning by doing principle applies. So everything in self-publishing, particularly when you're doing it for the first time, but really always, all the way through, is best done in that spirit of exploration and experiment. So you do something, you make your best guess, and you make your best effort, and you put it out there, and you learn from the doing of it. And from that, then you refine and you know better the next time. But I think, you know, there's a lot you can do at the research level around marketing nonfiction in particular, which is what your book is. And it's much easier in online terms to market nonfiction than fiction or poetry, because you can get very specific with your categories and your keywords, and you can make sure that your book is set up for exactly the people that you want to read the book. So best general advice when it comes to marketing is take a look at the category on Amazon and the other online retail stores. See what other books are there up at the top in the bestseller lists. Look at what they are doing in terms of marketing. Go back and look at their websites, look at their Facebook pages, look at their other social media pages. Look at the kinds of words they use, the kind of images they use, the book covers that are popular in the genre, themes that you can see that apply across a number of authors. There's just so much you can do at the research level in that way, which will give you ideas. In the doing of that, you'll get lots of ideas. There's no best way, actually, you know, to do these things. They are very subjective, like writing a book. There's no such thing as, you know, what's the best way to write a book beyond do the things that are essential, and then after that apply your creativity and make sure you're reaching out to the readers who have a need for this book, that you're actually narrowing your efforts so that you're focusing specifically on them rather than trying to reach more widely. The more narrowly you can define your marketing efforts, the more likely they are to be successful.
Yeah, and this just an idea. I don't know if it'll be helpful to you or not, Colin, but looks like the target audience of this book is ministers of churches, principals and lecturers of theological colleges and other leading Christian groups. I can't speak right now, but like new media seems to be all the rage right now, or at least has been for quite some time with churches. So why not create some sort of sermon-ready media that could easily be inserted into a sermon, right, that a pastor's doing? Because if it's all about Christian leadership, then maybe that's what that looks like. So maybe creating YouTube videos that are like 2 minutes in length that would give a congregation something to think about, or that would give a pastor, a great idea for a theme of a sermon, right? That's kind of what I think about when I think about Christian leadership, if that's the way you wanted to do it. So to me, this sounds like something that would be a great candidate for a blog or a YouTube channel, possibly, or a podcast, something where your target audience could easily consume the lessons that you want them to learn. But that's just kind of my first thought. But yeah, everything Orna said. Go ahead, Orna.
Yeah, well, that's a great example of reaching out directly to the people you most want to reach. And I think, if there's a best, in inverted commas, way to do a marketing, it's that type of thing. It's where you get really clear about your target audience, your target readership, and you think creatively about ways in which you can reach them. So I think in the community generally, when it comes to marketing, we get a lot of advice of the what you might call the standard stuff, which would be, do Amazon ads, do Facebook ads, that kind of thing. But there are lots of more creative ways in which we can reach out to the readers we want to reach. And it is easier with nonfiction. So even in terms of finding those pastors and those leaders, that becomes a relatively easy thing compared to, say, finding the readers for a historical fiction novel or something, which is not half as easy. So I think you should be well rewarded for some very specific sort of efforts there. So good luck with it.
All right. And that was the questions we had for today, but we do have some questions in the comments.
Okay.
Sharon Turner asks, keywords for AMS campaigns. Can you help? I can take this one if you want.
Yeah, well, I was just going to, you take it and then I'll see if I'll add.
Okay. I was going to recommend Publisher Rocket by Dave Chesson. Great tool. It's a tool that I use all the time. And you can spit in a topic and it'll spit out, not 1,000, but a lot of keywords that you can export. So that's a paid tool, but it's worth the money in terms of the time and effort that it saves you.
Yeah, because again, with keywords, it's all about getting very specific to your niche. And it's not possible for you to even, it's very time consuming for you to do the searching on Amazon that will dig up the keywords. And even when you do that, you're limited by your own thought patterns, whereas Dave has done all that work for you. There is a divide in the community as to whether it's best to use loads of keywords on Amazon ads or whether you're better off to kind of go very specific. And there are lots of other debates about Amazon ads as well. But certainly you won't go wrong with Publisher Rocket.
Yep. And there are other tools as well. That's the one that I personally use. You can do it manually, but it'll take you forever. So next question is from Catherine. She says, hi, Orna. I'm about to launch a rebranding effort and I'm wondering who I should turn to for assistance, a designer who does branding or a marketing professional?
I would say if it's branding, I think it's worth doing a session with a book marketing specialist who specialize in author branding and book brands. So unless you have a designer who is very clued in specifically on that, I still think at the conceptual level, before you engage your designer, that it would be well worth having that conversation. If you're not You could do it with a designer, Catherine, if you're fairly sure where you're going and you have the sort of designer that you can have that kind of conceptual conversation with. Some designers are much better working to a clear brief and don't really want to get too involved in the branding side of things. Some are more open. So it very much depends on the designer. But I would think, for a rebrand, obviously it costs money to do your covers and to get everything aligned for your rebrand. Presumably it will involve a change of book descriptions as well, perhaps. So before you do it, I would say it's worth investing in a professional who actually specializes in branding and rebranding, but it must be a book. Don't go for a general branding person. It must be a book specialist, somebody who understands the very particular nature of book branding.
Yep. Okay. And then one last question from the comments, and then we'll wrap. And this is from Marie Nicholson. I'm about to publish my first book. I have shortlisted 3 editors. Would you advise contacting all 3 at the same time? I was thinking of sending them the same 1,000-word sample to see which person is the best fit.
I think that's a great strategy. I'm a big believer in the 3 quotes for everything. I do it in my house, and I do. I think that's a great way to do it. And you get a kind of a general feeling for the editor as well, which is just as important as how much it costs, is just how you work together, how whether you look forward to their emails, that kind of thing is important. And you can get a sense of that in that process as well. So yeah, that's the way I would approach it.
I agree. So, and then Angie says, I just love the noble, supportive style of ALLi.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Angie. That's great. Thank you for being here. And thank you for everyone who's listening and will listen. And thank you especially to those of you who sent in your questions. Hopefully the answers were illuminating. You can write to us as a member anytime at info@allianceindependentauthors.org and ask any self-publishing question you may have. We're here every month answering some of those questions publicly, if that's what you would like also. And of course, don't forget there's our member forum, which is also a great place to put out your question and get lots of different answers from lots of different authors who have been there and done that already. So yes, until next time, happy writing and happy publishing. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.